And we talked about the Don lands. I know the Portlands, that's a question that has come up, and we're working with the federal government on an announcement that will come forward fairly soon. And again, we have the opportunity at this point to be able to have all three levels of government working together, and that is very, very helpful on challenges like the development of that land. So that's a productive conversation that's ongoing. We talked about housing, and I recognize that there are challenges that the city is facing in terms of social housing. We have a long-term housing plan that we're working on. Again, we have the federal government working with us, but there are some challenges around the affordability for the city that are quite urgent, and some of those we're looking at as part of our social assistance review, and so the mayor and I had a chance to talk about those. But again, I would just say it's very important to me as the premier that I have the opportunity to talk with elected leaders from across the province, but Toronto being the largest city, it's very important that they have the supports that they need, and that we have an open line of communication so that as decisions are made, we're able to consult with one another. So these regular meetings are very, very important. I will let the mayor say a few words, and then we will take your questions.
Well, may I just say how much I find these meetings to be valuable in the same context the Premier said. There's so many things now, almost none that aren't collaborative together between either two or, in most cases, three governments. And so it means a lot of these meetings are ending up to be sort of fairly routine discussions where we'll talk about transit and talk about the different elements we're working on together, which are numerous, all the different projects and the 15-year plan that we have and so forth. And the objective is just to make sure we're continuing to move them forward. The same is true of housing. The same is true with aspects of economic development. And so it isn't as if out of each of these meetings there comes some big announcement, but I think that's as it should be. If you're collaborating with somebody, if you're a partner with somebody, with the other governments, then it's going to be a lot of the businesses, routine business, where we're just making sure we're staying on track to do what I think is expected of us all, which is just get things done. And I think that can be the hallmark of this particular era, if we actually can get things done on transit, get things done on housing, get things done with respect to moving forward with economic development plans we all have. And that will be very exciting, because I think people will see a productivity they haven't necessarily seen before when it comes to governments that represent them working together. So I'm very pleased to have had this meeting today, and we covered a wide range of topics, as the Premier said.
Premier, the Thursday by-election in Scarborough River did not pan out very well for your party. I'm just wondering what lessons you have learned from that, and what moving forward, what changes we'll see moving forward. As a lot of voters were saying on Thursday that they felt that this government had lost touch with their concerns.
So as I said on by-election night, I was disappointed with the outcome, obviously. But as you say, we concerns at the doors in Scarborough Rouge River, and quite frankly, those concerns are things that we now have to take to heart, and we have to use them to inform our actions going forward. I think one of the things that we heard most consistently was hydro rates, and electricity rates, and I will say that I was just before the by-election, I had been in the north for a week. I had traveled across the northwest to the northeast to James Bay, and I heard the same thing. I heard about electricity rates in the north, so it's not something that is isolated in one riding in Toronto. This is a concern across the province, and I recognize that. I recognize that the investments that we have made, the changes we have made in the electricity sector by building out the infrastructure, building those lines, bringing the system up to a much better state of repair. That there's a cost associated with that, and that people are feeling that. So I heard those concerns, and as I say, those concerns now become part of our consideration as we go forward.
So you're on fundraising, in fact, but your government introduced some rather remarkable rule changes in the middle of the hearings, coming in saying you're going to ban your local, all local politicians from having their barbecue fundraisers in their own riding. That's considerably different than the idea of stopping cabinet ministers from selling access for their own, to their own lobbyists, to their own ministry. why would you go so far as to try and stop politicians from having their backyard barbecues in the summer to raise some money locally?
Well, so nobody has said that. We have not said that having backyard barbecues, having those events would be something that should be stopped. What we've said is that in order to get this right, in order to make what is, the most significant change in the rules in political fundraising that have been made in a generation, we need to listen to all of the concerns and make the changes that separate out the activity, the building of networks from the raising of money. And so we didn't see an amendment after first reading that went as far as that. And quite frankly, it's a process. As I said, we brought in a piece of legislation. We said we were going to listen to people and consult after first reading. And we then said, and we said at the same time, that we were going to do the same thing after second reading. And so we have indicated that we're going to bring forward, yes, another set of amendments after second reading that will incorporate that principle of separating out the raising of money from the holding of events. And I think it's only right that it would apply to all elected officials, all MPPs. I think that across the board, if we think the principle is the right principle, that those activities should be separated from one another, then that needs to apply to everyone in elected office provincially.
You don't think cabinet rules should be different than the rules for a backbench New Democrat? Seriously, you don't think that you're selling access to a cabinet minister is different than New Democrat?
If we believe that, and I'm sure everyone in every caucus believes that at some point there's the possibility that they will be a cabinet minister, they will be in government, then I think the principle applies to everyone.
Why such a swift change? I mean, what was sort of the epiphany for you? Because it seemed to have just sort of, come about in a matter of days that you kind of decided, oh, okay, let's actually do this. What was the sort of epiphany for you in deciding to?
Well, I think what happened was that as we looked at the amendments that had come forward, there were some amendments that went some way towards that change or that delinking of the events from the money, but they didn't apply across the board, and that didn't make sense because that's not a principled position. So I think that was the change. That okay, if we agree that in order to get this right, we need to do that, make that disconnection, then we need to do it for everybody. And so there wasn't an amendment that went far enough. We knew all along, so there was no change in the sense that we knew that we were going to be introducing new amendments after second reading. That was the whole point of putting the legislation out after first reading, was to get one round of consultation and then be able to hear from people a second time. So that's what we've done, and we'll be bringing forward bringing forward further amendments.
Air conditionings in schools. We're wondering if you are open to considering funding specifically to get the air conditioning into schools that don't have it?
Yeah.
And further, are you open to considering a change of rules? Because some parents groups actually want to raise the money themselves, but legally they can't do that.
So I don't know if the minister has had that conversation with parents groups. I think that the important thing about the way we fund schools in Ontario is that there's a real equity about that. So you can go to schools no matter where you are in the province, and you can see a high level of resources and supports and well-trained teachers. And so we want to make sure that equity stays in place. So that's a challenge when you start talking about who can raise money in a particular community and who can't. What I will say is that the $1.1 billion over 2 years that we just put in on top of the capital dollars that are already in the system, that money can be used for HVAC systems according to boards. So the majority of the schools in the province were built before the summers were as hot, quite frankly. That's the reality, and didn't last into the fall. So that the reality is that as new schools are built, as renovations and new additions are built, air conditioning is included. I mean, there are many schools in the province that do have air conditioning because they are newer builds. But boards can make that decision to use those new dollars for HVAC.
We're coming back to hydro.
Allison, I'm going to go to Allison and then.
Your
estate that is looking very closely at Vancouver's foreign buyer tax. How closely have you looked at that? Have you come to any decisions? What is your thinking?
No, we haven't come to any decisions. Actually, it's one of the things that the mayor and I discussed because the mayor's officials are sitting on that same working group with the federal government. So we're looking at what's happening in BC. You know, I will say that I would be very cautious in terms of moving forward on any changes or interventions into that market. It's a different market than British Columbia's in the GTA. So we're looking at it. We're working with the city and with the federal government, but there have been no decisions made.
A couple more, guys.
I'll come here.
The project's been around for over 14 years. Is the province finally ready to jump in and fund it? And Tory, is there some urgency here to get on with this work?
I'm looking forward to an announcement from all three levels of government soon. I think it is. I think it's a very important project in order to pave the way or unpave the way for other projects, quite frankly. And so that's why I'm excited about the work that we're doing with the city and with the federal government.
I would just say, Sean, in response to your question, it is a very important project, and it is one I haven't been around for 14 years, nor has the Premier. But the fact is that we've moved this forward more to the point where I think you're going to see some news soon on it, and it is very important to the development of transit, and it's very important to the economic development of the Toronto region. And so I'm happy that we're making progress, all three governments working together again. It really fits in with what I said, and I think there will be some news soon that will be a significant step forward.
Coming back to the cost of hydro, consumers have been saying for more than a year that they're getting killed, that they have to make choices between paying mortgages, having lights on, air conditioning, all the basics.
Yeah.
Did you not know that before the by-election that you lost, first of all? And with respect, what are you going to do about it for people who are stuck in this situation?
So long before the by-election, it was something that was on the mandate of the Minister of Energy. I recognize that there are challenges. I also recognize that we had to make upgrades. We had to make the investments that we made to have a reliable energy system in this electricity system in this province. We've made those investments, but I recognize that there's a cost associated with them, and I recognized that before the by-election. And as I've said, we understand that we need to take that into account and come up with increasing or further mitigations, because there are programs. I mean, the fact is the Ontario Energy Support Program was put in place specifically because we knew this was a huge concern. We knew it was a concern for people living on low incomes. That's why we put the Ontario Energy Support Program in place. And so we've worked to respond to those concerns. We renegotiated part of the contract that was with Samsung, quite frankly, because we knew we needed to take costs out of the system. We've made a lot of changes based on the knowledge that there were costs that were hard for people to bear. But what I know is that we haven't done enough, that there's more that we have to do, and the mandate of the Minister of Energy includes looking for ways to help people to bear the costs in their day-to-day lives.
Last question, guys.
So it's an urgent issue for the Minister of Energy.
Madam Premier, we learned today your government's going to be spending $1.7 million over 3 years on a program to help train bartenders and servers in Ontario to intervene in instances of sexual violence or harassment. What's that going to look like? What kind of training? Do you know?
Well, I think that there are lots of things that people can recognize in terms of behaviors that are unacceptable. And I think that often what can happen is that a person working in a bar, a young person working in a bar, may not know how to intervene, may not know what to do. And so I think it's actually giving those people who are working in those environments some tools to help them to deal with situations that they may want to intervene in, but they just don't know how to at this point. So that would be the training, and this is about creating safe environments for both the people who work in those organizations and for people who are customers.
It's more about de-escalation, not necessarily giving physically between people.
No. I know, and it won't be anything that would put those workers at risk. It would be about who do they call? How do they intervene? How do they find support to deal with the situation? I mean, this isn't about putting more people at risk. This is about preventing.